The marriage contract had been signed in starlight and shame. Princess Valeth Aruna of the Orenville sovereignty stood at the window of her chamber aboard the diplomatic cruiser, her iridescent wings folded tight against her back like a wound. Below, through the curved glass, the blue-green marble of Earth rotated slowly, a primitive, war-scarred world that had somehow clawed its way to the stars in less than 2 centuries. A world that now, according to the Grand Council, was humanity's gift to the galaxy. She called it something else. Ethan Cross, she said, tasting the name like something bitter. The human they had chosen for her. A warrior. A prince of some border nation called the United Reaches. The intelligence reports described him as a decorated veteran of 7 inter-colony conflicts, known for unconventional tactics, psychological endurance, and something his people called stubbornness, which the translation matrix rendered, generously, as tenacity. The door behind her opened. He walked in without announcing himself. That was the first insult. He was tall for a human, which still meant he barely reached her collarbone. Brown hair, sun-darkened skin, eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore no ceremonial armor, no jeweled collar, none of the rank markers her culture required at a first formal meeting. Just a simple gray uniform, military cut, with a single silver bar on the collar. "Princess Valeth," he said. His accent was flat, unhurried. She turned fully to face him, letting her wings unfurl slightly, a display of status, of power, of "I am more than you will ever comprehend." "You are late," she said. 3 minutes, he replied. "I was reading your kingdom's border reports. The ones your people buried in the diplomatic package." She went very still. "Those files were sealed." "Seals are suggestions." He crossed to the side table, poured himself water from the carafe, her water, her carafe, and sat down without being invited. "Your eastern frontier is being eaten alive by the Vorkai Collective. They've taken 4 border systems in 8 months. Your council is hiding it from the public. And they arranged this marriage," he gestured vaguely between them, "because they need a human military alliance badly enough to swallow their pride." Every word was accurate. Every word was an arrow. "You will not speak of sovereign Orenville military matters as though you have authority over them," Valeth said, her voice dropping to the register her people used before a formal challenge. Ethan Cross looked at her the way she imagined he looked at maps. Calmly. Analytically. Without fear. "I'm not claiming authority," he said. "I'm telling you what I know, so we're not wasting time pretending. Your kingdom is in trouble. I've been sent here to help. Whether you like me or not is irrelevant to whether I do my job." She hated him immediately. Completely. With a clarity that almost felt like relief. The wedding was a spectacle of controlled humiliation. Valeth wore the 7-layered ceremonial robe and the crown of her house's founding. Ethan wore his uniform, pressed to perfection, with 3 additional medals she hadn't seen before. When asked later why he'd added them, he said simply, "Seemed like the right occasion." The first 6 months of their arrangement were a Cold War conducted through formal dinners and separate schedules. Valeth attended her council sessions. Ethan disappeared into the military districts. She assumed he was socializing, drinking, performing the easy charm of diplomats who contributed nothing. Then the Vorkai struck the Irenthus cluster, 12 systems, simultaneous assault, a surgical extraction of the trade lanes that fed 40% of Orenville's food distribution network. The council chamber erupted into panic. Advisors shouted over each other. The High Marshal called for full mobilization. Someone suggested retreat. Someone else suggested negotiation with a collective that had never, in 300 years, honored a treaty it didn't write. Ethan Cross walked in uninvited. Again. "Give me the tactical feed," he said. "You have no standing in this chamber," the High Marshal began. "He has standing," Valeth said. The room went silent. She was as surprised as anyone. But she'd seen his work, 7 months of quiet preparation across her kingdom's defense networks, quiet reforms in supply chain logistics, an entirely new communication encryption protocol her own engineers hadn't thought of. She hadn't acknowledged it. She'd barely looked at it directly. But she'd looked. "Give him the feed," she repeated. What followed was later called, by Orenville historians, the 12-day reversal. Ethan didn't fight the way her generals fought. The Orenville military tradition valued honor formations, declared engagements, the poetry of war. Ethan fought like a human, which is to say, like something that had spent 10,000 years being the weakest creature in its ecosystem and had adapted accordingly. He feinted with 3 damaged cruisers and made the Vorkai Collective commit its reserve fleet to a trap that didn't exist. He used civilian cargo ships, as decoys, running them on automated pilots through the collective's sensor nets while the actual strike force came in from a direction that required calculating gravitational drift across 4 stellar bodies simultaneously. His junior aide, a 22-year-old human woman named Chin, had done the math in 6 hours. He talked to the enemy. This was the part that baffled Valeth most. He opened a direct channel to the Vorkai fleet admiral and talked. Not to negotiate, to distract. He asked questions about the collective's supply lines, their crew rotation schedules, their medical protocols. He was curious, genuinely curious, and the admiral, apparently also genuinely baffled, answered more than he should have, because no one had ever asked before. By the time the admiral realized the conversation was intelligence gathering, Ethan's forces had already retaken 9 of the 12 systems. On day 12, Valeth stood on the bridge of the flagship as the last Vorkai formation retreated beyond the outer marker. The crew around her erupted, Orenville officers, who did not cheer, were cheering. Ethan stood beside her. He was watching the retreat on the tactical display, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "You could have been killed," she said. It came out differently than she intended. Less accusation, more, something else. "Could have been," he agreed. "You went aboard the damaged station at Irenthus personally. The structural integrity was at 11%. Someone had to reroute the communication array. I knew the schematic. There were engineers. They were scared." He glanced at her sideways. "I've been scared plenty. Doesn't mean you stop." She stared at him. This short, graceless, protocol-ignoring, carafe-drinking human who had saved 40% of her kingdom's food supply in 12 days using cargo ships and conversation and sheer, grinding refusal to be beaten. "Why?" she asked. The word came out raw. "You owe this kingdom nothing. You owe me nothing. I have not been. You've been exactly what I expected," he said. Not unkindly. Smart, proud, carrying a kingdom's weight by yourself and not asking for help because asking would mean admitting you needed it. "I know that type. I've been that type." She said nothing. "I didn't come here for gratitude," Ethan continued. "I came because it was right. Your people are good people. The kids in the border systems didn't deserve to starve because a collective decided to expand. So..." He shrugged. A very human gesture. Casual. Almost dismissive of his own heroism. She found, unexpectedly, that her wings had fully extended, the unconscious Orenville display of deep regard. She folded them quickly. Not quickly enough. He noticed. He said nothing. But the corner of his mouth moved. The council wanted to give him honors, titles, a seat on the advisory board. He accepted the honors for the human crew members who had served alongside Orenville forces. He declined the title. He asked, instead, for a single concession, that the border systems receive direct resource allocation for the next decade, bypassing the trade lanes the collective had targeted. "You're asking for protection for people who will never know your name," the High Marshal said, bewildered. "That's the point," Ethan replied. Valeth watched the entire exchange from her throne. She had spent 7 months cataloging his faults, his informality, his directness, his inability to observe court protocol, his irritating habit of being right. She had her list memorized. She was finding it harder to care about the list. That evening, she went to his study. He was reading border reports again, different ones this time, the northwestern frontier. Planning, already, for the next problem. He looked up. He waited. Ethan Cross, she said. Princess Valeth. You have been, she chose the word carefully, from the oldest register of her language, the one used in the founding songs, Valanthary. There was no direct translation. It meant something between unexpectedly worthy and the one who remained. He tilted his head. Is that good? Yes, she said. It is. He nodded once. Went back to his reports. She sat down in the chair across from him. She did not leave. Outside, across 40 rebuilt systems, in border towns that had been dying 8 months ago, the lights were coming back on. Humanity doesn't always announce itself with fire and thunder. Sometimes it walks in 3 minutes late, pours your water, reads your classified reports, and quietly refuses to let your world fall.